What I like to do here is use the metaphor of Santa Claus to kind of explain Harari's myths. And basically, when we were kids, we had this myth of Santa Claus that that really served a certain function for us. But as we grew older and started to mature, all of a sudden, that myth went away. And so now the question is what Harari, what he's done is he said, well, he's really expanded this concept of myth because he has added into the concept of myth an awful lot of things that we thought were real. Things like nations, liberty and equality concepts, things like human rights, money itself, all right, the laws, gods, and our corporations. These are all inside of what he called myths. And so the question is did we need them and why did we need them? All right. Or why do we need them? And he talks about the fact that early on in Sapiens history, Sapien was kind of in the middle of the group. The lions were at the top of the animals, and we were kind of in the middle. But then, over a short period of time, we actually, moved from being in the middle to being at the top, the apex of the animals kingdom, and we did that, according to him, basically because of mass cooperation that we did based upon these myths. So the myths were responsible. But in the 21st century, what he says is the 21st century is actually championing two other things. They're championing technology and intelligence, not mass cooperation. So now let's take a step back and say, but can we even believe anymore in these intersubjective realities? We stopped believing in Santa Claus, and as science moved along with evolution, and we learned about dinosaurs, we kind of stopped believing in the myths of the literal interpretation of the Bible. So then, what's going to happen with our concept of nations and religions and money? Are they also going to die a death? I mean, we certainly do realize that what nation we are in and what religion we believe in and some of the values of money are all basically a crapshoot depending upon where you were born in the world, and they're not consistent, right? So what has Harari done? And what I think he's done here is I have a friend who says that Harari wields a sharp sword, creating a huge swath through his beliefs. And what he means there is that, there's an awful lot of us out there who really, for the longest time, and still do believe that an awful lot of those myths are really real. And what Harari's done is he said, no, they're really stories. They're stories in the future that we will be telling our children, and they're not something that is real. And so what does that mean? I mean, that has a tremendous implication of what happens next, right, in the 21st century. Because of if you will, the bloom is off the rose as far as those myths are concerned. I find it very difficult to encourage my grandson to go fight for a nation that I know the nation is a myth itself. And those things have been a very strong part of our worldview. They supply the ought of what things should be in our worldview. And that ought and that worldview have really driven our values and our policies. And so, if you look out there, the idea of mass cooperation and the need for a massive group is no longer necessary. And if we look back in history, there has been times when there were other species of Homo on the planet, but it was biology that determined that we had different groups of Homos. And whereas in the future, we're really saying it's intelligence that's going to make that decision. So the idea is that as intelligence and not biology takes over, right, the stories, right, that can be about what we want them to be about, and so it's not they're not fixed, and we have control over the lever, if you will, for those stories, and that's why Harari finishes his book by saying that the future is about what we want to want. Right? We have to make some pretty serious decisions about what we want to want, and we have to decide whether, if a deciding factor is intelligence, are we going to treat stupid people the same way we treat animals? This is some of the things we have to think about and consider based upon Harari's position. Thank you.